Greetings, and thank you for joining us here on Just Conspiracy, where we just wish to conspire to bring heaven down to earth. The only way that we're ever going to accomplish this is if we all learn the very basics of law and make sure that we stand up with each other when we're exercising our rights, because it's very, very self-evident and apparent that the government will not protect your rights, will not secure your rights for you. And the only thing people know how to do these days is go get an attorney. And if you have to have an attorney to exercise your rights, then they're not actually rights, they're privileges. And privileges can be taken away from you whenever it's politically convenient for somebody to do so. Keep that in mind. For the next couple of videos, we're going to be going over Joni Ramos' case, because we're going to have to ask y'all for help. The government's not doing what they're supposed to do, and the whole reason they're not doing what they're supposed to do is because they believe you do not care about your own rights. And because Joni's entire case is centered around a trust and trust law, this video is going to kind of introduce us to it. So we're going to watch a really quick introduction to trust law, breaking down kind of some of the basic elements, and then we're going to talk about a trust that we're all a part of here in America, and we probably feel like it's been violated one way or another. Stick around and check it out.
Let's say that our law professor, Professor Miao, gives me $5 out of the kindness of her heart and tells me to use it to buy ice cream for you. Something very interesting happens here. I hold the $5, but it is not really mine. It's yours. In very broad terms, anytime someone holds stuff for the benefit of others, the law might say that a trust has been created. Now, before we explore further, let's talk about some legal terms. Using the $5 to buy ice cream example, there are three actors involved in this trust. First, Professor Miao creates the trust, and without her, there would be no money and no ice cream for anyone. It could be said that she settles the arrangement between you and I, so the law calls her the settler. Next, Professor Miao, the settler, gave her instructions to me, and I'm supposed to use her money in the way she wants me to use it. Because I received the instructions of the trust, the law calls me the trustee. Finally, you come in. Your only job here is to receive the benefits of the trust, so the law calls you the beneficiary. Those are the three parties to the trust: settler, trustee, and beneficiary. Got it? That's great. Now let's explore the trust idea a little bit. Let's say I take Professor Miao's $5 and I faithfully use it to buy the ice cream for you. But on the way to your place, the ice cream disappears because I accidentally ate it. In this situation, as much as Professor Miao might be disappointed in me, it is you who would be most unhappy about what I did. So you could ask me to buy another ice cream for you using my own money. Now, two things happened here. First, I went against the instructions given by Professor Miao. The law calls this, simply enough, a breach of trust. Along with that, you wanted me to make amends for my breach of trust by giving you what you should have gotten. The law calls this a remedy for breach of trust. With these ideas in mind, that is, of breaches of trust and remedies for breaches, let's play with more examples. Let's say I don't buy the ice cream, but I give my money to my friend, and he buys the ice cream using the $5 from Professor Miao. I've clearly breached this trust, and the law might let you take the ice cream from my friend because he clearly bought it using Professor Miao's money. We call this the proprietary claim for breach of trust. Or let's say that I used the $5 to buy chocolate instead of ice cream. Or I definitely breached the trust because Professor Miao told me to buy ice cream and not chocolate. You could choose between demanding an ice cream from me or just taking the chocolate. That's the idea of election. Finally, let's say that I buy the ice cream, but then you tell me, hey, you can eat the ice cream instead. I ask in reply, are you sure? And you say, yeah, I mean it, just eat it. If I then decide to eat the ice cream, you cannot say I breached the trust because you gave your informed consent. So that's all we'll be talking about today. In today's video, we gave names to the three parties of the trust: the settler, trustee, and beneficiary. We also explored some fun examples regarding breaches of trust. Now, trust law is just incredibly fascinating, and personally, it's my favorite private law subject. But for the law students watching this, it's also an incredibly technical subject, so don't forget to do your readings as well. In any case, hope you enjoyed this video and that it was useful for your understanding. Take care, everyone, and much cheers to all of you.
Thank you, What is Law Even, for that very good illustration on the three parties to a trust. You have a settler, a trustee, somebody who's being trusted with something, and then a beneficiary, somebody who benefits from the trust. This is the way that all trusts are set up. It's a little more complicated than this, and another thing to keep in mind, the settlor or the grantor of the trust can also become a beneficiary or a trustee. They could be either one. They are not supposed to be both in an irrevocable common law trust. That's something to keep in mind. Very, very important. Now, I was talking earlier about a trust that we've all been a part of, at least if you're here in America. And what is this trust that I speak of? Well, the Constitution is a very, very good example of a common law express trust. That's exactly what the Constitution is meant to be. Because trusts are very complicated, and because law is kind of complicated, this is why everybody doesn't know it. This is why we leave it up to lawyers and attorneys. But then it can be abused, and they might use it for their own interest or gain, and not to do justice or perform justice for the general society. But other elements of a trust is that when you're speaking of an express trust, it has to have an intention. Whoever is authoring it or whoever is creating the trust has to have a clear intention to do so. It also has to have a subject matter. It has to have something that it's talking about. A way of carrying on business, a way of governing people, a way of forming a corporation. And then it has to have a specific object. It has to have an objective, a goal, something to work towards, very, very simply. And all of these things can be found in the Constitution for the United States of America. And if we just look at the preamble sets up and tells us that what's about to follow is a trust. Let me read it to you real quick. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. So if we look at this, who's the settlor? Who's the grantor of this? We, the people of the United States of America. The people is capitalized. The P is capitalized. It means it's a proper noun. But most state constitutions, the P is lowercase. That's the Constitution that's talking about you. That's the contract. That is the trust in which the people are in with their state government. And then what does it go on to do? It goes on to lay down a subject matter and an object. Why are we the people doing this? To create unity, establish justice, to provide for the common defense of each other, the common defense of these United States. And who are we doing it for? Who is the beneficiaries? Ourselves and our posterity. The ones that we create and come after us. This is the most basic form of a common law express trust that I can really think of. When you go down, after reading the preamble, it goes into Article 1, which talks about how the legislatures are supposed to behave. It goes into Article 2, talking about the duties and obligations of the executive branch. Article 3 talks about what the judiciary's role in this enterprise will be. This is exactly how a common law express trust is set up, and it's a public trust. It is a public trust that all of us in the public, they call it the social contract, right? We've all heard that term. And if you don't believe that it is a public trust, the Department of Interior made a whole webpage about it. Basic obligation of public service. Thomas Jefferson enunciated the basic principles of public service. When a man assumes a public trust, he should consider himself as public property. This sentiment has been expressed by numerous others over time, becoming the familiar principle public service is a public trust. To ensure public confidence in the integrity of the federal government, Executive Order 12674, as amended, forms the framework for ethical behavior required and expected of all federal employees. As a condition of public service, you are expected to adhere to these fundamental principles of ethical behavior. And then it goes through and lists several fundamental principles of ethical behavior for them. You see, they know it's a trust. It's a trust. Now, is this trust functioning well? Is it a healthy trust? To decide that, we gotta figure out what the intention of the trust is, right? Because it's about intention, the subject matter. We know because it's the Constitution, the subject matter is government, and the object, what the aim of the government is to do. And if we really want to figure this out, we got to go back and look at the people and what they wrote about it when they were creating this document, when they were creating this express trust. And I found this paragraph very recently, but I believe is the best way to explain the function or the object of this trust that we call the Constitution for the United States of America. It's a letter from John Adams to the Massachusetts militia. While our country remains untainted with the principles and manners which are now producing desolation in so many parts of the world, while she, America, continues sincere and incapable of insidious and impious policy. Impious, irreverent towards the Supreme Being, proceeding from or manifesting a contempt for the Supreme Being, tending to dishonor the Supreme Being or his laws and bring them into contempt. Today here in America, we have statutes that are put in place by the Capitol which give states the permission to go and take children away from families. To take them away from families oftentimes when the parents cannot go and confront whoever made the allegations against them that got the state involved in investigating them. In my mind, that is a direct front and attack upon the Creator, the Supreme Being of the universe, and His law. We shall have the strongest reason to rejoice in the local destination assigned us by Providence. But should the people of America once become capable of that deep simulation towards one another and towards foreign nations, which assumes the language of justice and moderation while it is practicing iniquity and extravagance, and displaying in the most captivating manner the charming pictures of candor, frankness, and sincerity, while it is rioting in rapine and insolence. This country will be the most miserable habitation in the world. Should the people of America become so unjust, not willing to stand up for the principles and manners and morals of justice, that they allow this government to write statutes which take away kids, to issue orders that have effects in your lives, to administrate your persons and properties, and to administrate other nations around the world. If we shall ever come to this position and try and sell it as we are bringing justice, we are being honest, we are being frank and candor, because we gotta hold that public trust with you. If we shall ever do this to one another as Americans, then we should live and inhabit the most miserable place on this planet. And it will spread everywhere. It'll spread everywhere. And why would this happen? Why is John Adams talking about this? Because we have no government armed with power capable of contending with human passions unbridled by morality and religion. He's talking about the Constitution, and he's saying, when we created the Constitution, when we created this wonderful document, we didn't give the government the power to judge people morally. We didn't give them the power to control their religion, to control their moral beliefs. That's not something that we put into this express trust document we called the Constitution. So if the people ever do get to that point where they allow the law to be broken against each other, where they carry on with these principles and manners, it'll be the most miserable place to live. Because we did not create a government to be tyrannical over you or to force you to do something. We just created a government with freedom, and you are free to be a good individual with good morals and good principles. And unless you inflict a harm, injury, or loss upon somebody else, we don't have a government that can punish you for that. And today we do. Today we do. And let's see why he said that they did not put these restraints on the government. Why didn't they do that? Avarice, ambition, revenge, or gallantry would break the strongest cords of our Constitution as a well goes through a net. Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. Avarice, ambition, revenge, or gallantry, when we start showing these characteristics in our society, and when we start picking people upon these characteristics, on their splendor, how do they look in society, how much wealth have they accumulated, and if you weren't a millionaire when you went into Congress, you will definitely be a millionaire when you come out. No doubt. When we start using revenge, we're not voting for this guy, we're voting against the other one to determine the way you choose your administrators. When we choose administrators instead of ministers in society, when we ask to be ruled instead of served, all of these traits will cut through the strongest cords of the Constitution, because the Constitution was only made for a moral and religious people, because it's only a moral and religious people that are going to go out and tell their government they're doing wrong. The people who commit wrongs are not going to go and tell the government, oh, you're committing wrong against other people. It's only the truly moral and the truly righteous who will say, hey, this is not right, and we will not stand for it. We will not stand for it. That's the only way that the government has ever been corrected in its life. With that in mind, thank you for joining us here for this episode talking about introduction into trust law. I hope you've learned something from it. The next video will talk about the Rainbow Families Trust. It'll go into these ideas of who is the settlor, who are the beneficiaries, who are the trustees, and what type of subject matter are these trusts created for? What were they supposed to do that wasn't done? That's the matter of controversy. Otherwise, it wouldn't be in court. Thank you for joining us. We are Just Conspiracy, and we just wish to conspire to bring heaven down to earth. One world, love, and peace.